Welcome to this webinar on linking high school and college. What's next for dual enrollment in California? I'm Louis Friedberg, Executive Director at EdSource.
And I'm John Fensterwald, Editor-at-Large at EdSource.
And this webinar is brought to you by EdSource. If any of you want to follow our work on these and other topics, please sign up for our daily email newsletter on our website and also our weekly podcast, This Week in California Education.
We are pleased to offer this webinar in collaboration with Wheelhouse, the Center for Community College Leadership and Research at UC Davis, and PACE, Policy Analysis for California Education.
So in the next hour, we're going to try to cover a lot of ground. We'll explore how dual enrollment works, what models are most effective, and what can be done to increase dual enrollment opportunities across the state.
We're excited to talk about dual enrollment because it's recognized as a potentially powerful strategy to increase both high school and college graduation rates, especially for first-generation students.
So just to clarify before we jump in, high school students have been able to take college classes for decades. But in 2015, the strategy got a big boost when Governor Brown signed a law, AB 288, which many of you out there have probably heard about, but something I wasn't that familiar with. And this created something called the College and Career Access Pathways Program. You'll hear it referred to as CCAP sometimes by folks on the panel and probably myself, although we'll try to keep the use of acronyms to a minimum. This law allowed colleges to provide classes on high school campuses exclusively for high school students, rather than being open to the entire community. There was a lot of other things in the bill, but one of the things that also required districts to do was to provide free textbooks to students participating in the program.
As of this year, 51 community college districts and 79 of the state's 114 community colleges have signed dual enrollment agreements with their local districts.
And in addition to offering courses on high school campuses, just over a dozen districts have created what are called early college or middle college high schools. These are high school programs on the community college campuses themselves. In fact, as we'll hear shortly, more students than previously reported are involved in these programs. So let's meet quickly our panel of experts. Mikal Kurlander is the co-author of the Wheelhouse Research Brief on Dual Enrollment. She's an education professor in the School of Education at UC Davis. Welcome, Mikal. And Darren Brawley is the superintendent of the Compton Unified School District. He's been with the district since 2012. He's also a member of EdSource's Board of Directors. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you.
We also are pleased to have Leslie Shue Freeman. She's the manager of dual enrollment for Oakland Unified School District, where over 6,000 students are participating in the district's dual enrollment programs. Welcome, Leslie. And Fatima Gatala also works in Oakland's dual enrollment program. And we understand it's now based in 15 high schools in Oakland and offers more than 40 courses. Welcome, Fatima.
Hi. Thank you.
Well, Mikal, why don't we start with you first? Your paper on dual enrollment just came out last week. And give us an overview of what you found.
Great. And I did share some slides, if hopefully those could be projected. Great. Thank you. So thank you for having me. And I'm here on behalf of both myself and my co-authors on this, Elizabeth Friedman and Alice Lee, both at UC Davis, and Russell Rumberger, who's a professor of education at UC Santa Barbara. And again, this is joint work we did for Wheelhouse and PACE, and it represents a long-standing and robust partnership we have both with the California Department of Education and the California Community College Chancellor's Office. If you could please advance my slide, thank you. So importantly, what we wanted to do was basically do an unprecedented match between all California high school students and community college to understand whether and who participates in community colleges as high school students across the state. And so to do that, we use a cohort of high school seniors, of 16, 17 seniors. So keep in mind, this is a little bit before this big effort to increase enrollment in dual enrollment programs. And we match them to California Community College Chancellor's Office data on special admits. That is a category for high school students who are concurrently enrolled at community colleges. And we did that to build a cohort to look at any community college participation among the 16, 17 high school seniors, and to look at all of their participation in community college courses throughout their high school years. And what we get is we get background information on students from their K-12 files, but we also importantly get information about what they took when they got to community colleges, what time of day their courses were, what kind of courses they enrolled in, how many units, et cetera. And I will say more about that in just a minute. So go ahead and advance my slide, please. What did we find? Well, our analysis found that 12.6%, so a little shy of 13% of California high schoolers take community college courses. This rate is at much higher than previously reported rate. And keep in mind, the main reason we believe it's higher than previously reported rates is because we're capturing all community college participation, not necessarily just those informal dual enrollment programs. And so we know that a lot of individual students may tap into community colleges to take particular courses. Importantly, we also find that disparities in college course taking among high school students are substantial, with significant differences by race and socioeconomic status. African American and Latinx students are participating in community college participation or dual enrollment programs at lower rates than white and Asian students. Particularly important is that Latinx students represent 50% of high school seniors in the state, and so we care a lot about this underrepresentation. We also see underrepresentation by socioeconomic status as well. You can go ahead and advance my slide, please. So what do we know about the types of courses students take? We know that students are enrolling, particularly we see that they enroll during the school day, right? So as many as almost 50% of students are taking courses in what we would think of as a normative typical school day, that is before 3 p.m. Another group, about a quarter of students take classes in the evening or in the afternoons. We also see what students are taking. And so we know that most students are taking social science and humanities courses, account for about a quarter of all course enrollments. You can go ahead and advance. We also looked at what types of students, the amount of credits that students are accumulating. And particularly, we wanted to know if the classes that they're taking are going to be transferable to CSU and UC. And in fact, we see that most of them are. We also see that the majority of students are enrolling in between 3 to 6 units, which is the equivalent of 1 to 2 courses. One last thing on this slide is that we see about 9% of students enroll but do not actually receive credit. That is, they don't finish the course or accumulate the credits that they initially enrolled for. All right. You can go ahead and advance my slide. There's a lot I didn't show today that is in the report. In particular, we look at school differences, and this is something we plan to probe on further, which is how does the distribution and participation look by schools across the state? We also offer additional information about the types of courses and other important information is available at the full report, which is available either through Wheelhouse or through PACE.
Nicole, really interesting statistics. Thank you for doing all that data work. I had a question about the 30% or so other. Would that be the career technical courses that the pathways likely, or what?
It could include any number of career technical, and we're able to look more closely at what those career technical courses look like and if they're transferable as well. That's right.
So I wanted to now go to Superintendent Darren Brawley in Compton. Superintendent Brawley is superintendent of Compton Unified. You have a pretty robust dual enrollment program. Could you just tell us briefly what does that consist of?
Well, we have a dual enrollment program that covers all 4 of our high schools, 3 comprehensive high schools, as well as our early college program. In terms of the courses taken, if we look at the counts, we have about 283 courses taken at Centennial High School, 392 at Dominguez, where they're currently enrolled right now, 163 at Compton High School, and at the early college, whose population is 1/4 of all of those, 877 courses currently being taken in terms of that have been taken by the seniors that are graduating there. So The program consists of both the AB 288 as well as CTE pathway components.
What is the CTE pathway? What is that?
Well, that's typical of what folks would refer to as AB 288, which allows the local education agency or school district to partner with the community college within its area to provide CTE pathways that students can complete.
Just to tell us, I know there's about 13 school districts around the country, around the state that have a high school campus on the college campus. Could you just tell us just briefly how does that work?
Ours is a little different. It's an early college, and but it's the same concept. And you know, most recently we had our inaugural class graduated last year, 100% graduation rate, 100% A through G completion rate, and 67% of them fulfilled the requirements of an associate arts degree. So very, very successful program within Compton Unified. And the campus is located on one of our sites, but beginning their 11th grade year, students began participating in courses actually on the community college side.
Talking with Darren Brawley, superintendent at Compton Unified. Darren, how much of a demand is there for these courses?
There's a demand, and there's more of a demand than actually what can be delivered. So I think one of the shortfalls really is that local education agencies like Compton Unified School District, any other school district, is required to operate solely within the confines of the community college district that serves them. And that prevents more students from being served. So there's definitely legislation that needs to be acted upon to alleviate that restriction.
Why is that a problem?
Said differently, if I'm a student that is interested in something that is not offered at my local community college, then I have no way of receiving that through the current legislation related to AB 288. So there might be a CTE pathway that is provided by a surrounding community college district, and there are at least 4 within our area. But the one that serves my agency may be limited in terms of how many CTE pathways they're able to provide. So why should students be limited in terms of exploring what they may have an interest in, especially if the local community college does not offer those pathways?
Darren, I should have started off with this question, but the larger context. Why do you think this is important? Obviously, you're committed to this in your district.
Well, it's important because we all have different interests. You know, students that are not satisfied with the programs that are being offered within my school district, they have the ability to go wherever they want to go in terms of enrolling into another school district to provide the options that the parents believe are in the best interest of their kids, or the students believe are in the best interest. But with the way that the system is right now, students are locked into the community college that serves them. So if I want a pathway in an area that is not offered within the local community college district serving me as a student, then I'm really precluded from participating in this process until after I graduate, right? And then I can go to whatever community college that I want to. But, you know, from our perspective, kids should have our students anywhere within the state of California should have the option of exploring whatever their interest is. And if the local community college that serves that district is not able to provide that, then students should have the option of being served through AB 288 by another community college district that does.
Okay, great. And reminding again that AB 288 is the Assembly Bill 288 that Governor Brown signed in 2015. It only actually went into effect in 2016. And then with ramp up and so on, I think there's a feeling it really only went into effect in 2017. So 2 years it's been in full implementation. So this is something that's still very much in process. So we want to now thank you, Darren. We'll come back to you. I'm sure there'll be questions from folks on the line. I wanted now to go to Oakland.
Oakland, Leslie and Fatima, welcome. You've been at this for a long time in Oakland Unified. Describe your program and the success you've had in reaching underserved students, if you will.
Yeah, we launched our program in 2015, in the fall of 2015. We serve roughly 15 high schools, which is nearly all of our high schools, about 1,000 students a semester with a mix of CTE and general ed courses. We are currently under a CCAP MOU with our local community college district. Basically, some nuts, just really brief nuts and bolts. Schools request courses based on their pathways, their career academies and pathways, the school mission, as well as student surveys. And then we work closely with the colleges to identify the best course and instructor. And Oakland, I'm happy to report, is higher than the state and national average as far as participation rates go. In the same year that's reported in the research for 2016 to 17, we had a 26% participation rate of seniors participating in one or more dual enrollment courses during high school. And I will also say that doesn't include students who go on their own to the community college. And more recently in 2018 to 19, it grew to 38%. Our African American and Latino rates are also higher as far as participation, and it's about 27% of African American students and 30% of Latinx students participated in a dual enrollment course at some point during high school.
And could I just ask a quick question? One of our listeners called, asked you the question, can only 12th graders take dual enrollment courses?
No, I think that's one of the beauties of our dual enrollment program here in Oakland in partnership with the Peralta colleges is that it's open to all 9th through 12th graders. So truly, if you're interested in taking on the rigors of college, we invite you to participate.
So you have students who are taking sort of traditional courses or courses that might qualify for A to G for admission, and also you have career tech programs. Describe how the two different programs work and give us an example if you can.
Yeah, I think that, one of the strengths of our program is that we're really designed to support student needs. So, we do have pathways in our district. And so our courses are a blend of schools request kind of a blend of CTE, so career ed courses that, are complementary or sort of the college level of their program of study at their pathways. But then schools also request courses that get students transfer ready, which is one less course that they then do not have to take at a UC, CSU, or a private four-year college.
You gave an example when we talked before about a woodworking program at Fremont High. Describe that and what is it that students then get from the dual enrollment program?
Yeah, so this high school is amazing, Fremont High School. They're very intentional about their design of their pathway and how dual enrollment is kind of used as a tool to complement what they're trying to achieve in their pathway. And with this, they're really intentional with Laney College's wood technology program. And they basically are roughly 3 courses into the certificate degree with the wood technology program at Laney.
So do we need to go to the next slide? See.
Sure. I did want to comment on the question that came up around why Oakland Unified has been able to achieve such high rates of participation amongst our African American and Latinx students. I think it's worth mentioning that, first of all, the dual enrollment program truly would not exist had it not been for a local parcel tax that supported this initiative. It's called Measure N. And that allowed high schools to pay for books and supplies and equipment, including lab equipment, so that our facilities are comparable to that of the college. And it allowed, us to get hired to build a program, a brand new program for the district. When we launched in 2015, we also made an intentional decision to focus on the most disadvantaged students at a few of our high schools. And the rationale is that we wanted to create a program that worked for all kids and that didn't reinforce the inequities that have existed too long. And, we know that if you design a program that's really, truly in response to student and school needs, that it's going to work for all kids, and that context is everything, and that one size just doesn't fit all. And so some of that, what that kind of looks like is that, you know, we support our schools. We've got 15 high schools, so you can imagine the diversity amongst those high schools. And, you know, it looks different, and it takes more time at some school sites to develop a successful dual enrollment program. And we advocate with our community college that these differences sort of be taken into consideration. So a specific example of what this looks like is that the community colleges, as many of our school districts probably know, is that they have to kind of make sure they're filling these courses, you know, because they're getting state apportionment for these courses. And so when we first launched the program, the minimum enrollment for each of the courses was very high, and it excluded a number of our high schools from participating. Since then, we've been able to reduce that minimum course enrollment number to a reasonable number where our schools, even our smaller schools, and those that also happen to have the highest African American and Latinx populations can participate. And we also work together with our colleges to make sure that, you know, if we're getting feedback from faculty that say our students are not quite college ready, that we enter a conversation and we grapple together with our community college colleagues around developing professional learning experiences for faculty, as well as working with our high schools to make sure that we're creating intentional structures that support students.
Can we regard to the next slide, I think now?
Yeah, this just gives you a sense of the spread of the type of courses. And, you know, as you can see, some of our top departments that we partner with are in the social sciences and humanities. These are courses that are typically IGETC and are one less course that a student would then have to take at a 4-year.
And go ahead and explain IGETC to the audience so that they understand that.
Yeah, sorry, I know, the acronyms. The gist of IGETC is basically these are the transfer requirements that a student who transfers from a 2-year community college would have to take in order to transfer into a UC or CSU.
Do you provide any supports for your students in these courses?
We do. So we made a big investment. Leslie and I have made a huge investment in the power of student choice, that when given like honest and accurate information, young people can make really great choices for themselves. And so 3 examples of how that shows up in OUSD's dual enrollment program. First is that the course requests are student-centered. So basically asking students, which college courses do you want at your high school? And then all our high schools conduct student surveys and use that data to inform their course requests for the next year. So for students, it's courses, they're exposed to the idea of dual enrollment, that college courses can be on their campus and their voice is included. We also do equitable recruitment. So we really emphasize distributing information far and wide. We make a recruitment slide deck that schools can use. We want schools to blast the information to all grade levels, pathways, after school programs. We want adults, from coaches to after school coordinators to families, to know of the program, post flyers, send messages through Jupiter or Aries, push into classrooms. So very wide and equitable recruitment. And then also, maybe most importantly, there's no barriers to enrollment. So if a student is willing and able to commit to doing the college level work, then they can enroll. There's no GPA restrictions, there's no tracking. There's an emphasis on giving honest information to students. So what's expected in a college level course? What may be difficult? What are the incentives? What do you get out of this? How may this support your goals for graduation and beyond? Are you interested and can you commit? And if those are yes answers, then they can enroll. And then for student supports, we ensure schools have infrastructure and personnel and a plan to support students. There's a high school point person assigned to each course. We created a really in-depth student orientation slide deck used in the first 2 weeks of each term for all the courses. Before the add or drop or withdraw deadlines, which are the college deadlines, our schools check in with students and instructors, how they're doing, how attendance is going. Schools have counselors assigned to dual enrollment. I visit the courses each semester. I lift up concerns and troubleshoot along with students, school site.
And Fatima, if I could just jump in and also just address this to Darren Brawley before we go to the community college folks who have now joined us. But a question we got from one of the people listening in is loves the idea of high school students taking college classes, but is concerned about the high incidence of suicides and stress, and raising concerns. Is this having students take college courses on top of high school students? Is this like adding to their stress level?
That's a great question. So my background is I'm a classroom high school teacher, and I was the high school point person in the classroom before I came to this position. And so I was there with the students doing the recruitment and sitting in the class. And I would say short answer, no. And part of it is both the information we're giving students before they sign up, and so that they feel informed, and also the wraparound services. So that point person is checking in with students. Counselors are checking in with students. There's communication, like I said before, add, drop, or withdraw deadlines, checking in with students about how they're doing. And students have been, pretty honest. If they feel like it's too much and they want to drop the course or withdraw, then we support that. And so I've felt both in the classroom and just even in this position, we haven't seen that it's added to stress, because again, it's about student choice. No one's forcing them into the class.
Let me just ask Darren Brawley about that.
And what we see is that we see this as another option. So the typical options that students are going to take are going to be either AP courses or college courses. And from the perspective of an AP course, advanced placement course, you have to take the course. That's a lot of rigor, a lot of stress, and they have to pass the test in order to really have the course count for what they're taking the course for. They're taking the course so that they don't have to take the college equivalent later on when they get to college. Well, students that don't want to take AP courses tend to take this route. So with the exception of the middle college, early college models, where they're really doing both. They're taking AP courses and they're taking the college courses. So the vast majority of students in our district that are actually enrolled in AB 288 type courses are students that are taking it in lieu of going the AP route. So this is another option for them.
Okay, well, we sure there'll be further questions. Wanted to welcome now Raul Arambula, his dean at the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. Welcome, Raul.
Hello, welcome, thank you.
And with him is Rosa de Anda. She is Governmental Relations Specialist, also in the Chancellor's Office, and is going to tell us about some very interesting developments, which I think I wasn't aware of, but a new law that was signed last spring that just went into effect last month that is supposed to eliminate some of the roadblocks to participation. But let me start with you, Raul. How important is this strategy for the community colleges and this whole Vision for Success initiative, which is really to increase participation and completion?
Yeah, I think this fits in for a couple of the Chancellor's Office goals, and specifically the equity gap, because if we're talking about CCAP and we're talking about our middle college, the intent of both of them is to hit the underserved, underrepresented groups. So we're trying to close that equity gap. And again, with CCAP, the idea is to get these students college ready. The idea of, yes, they can take these college courses and end up continue on to university. So that's the whole purpose of the intent of both the middle college and our CCAP, was to hit these underserved, underrepresented students that weren't previously thinking about going to college. So specifically regarding the vision and equity gap, that's what the CCAP and our middle college are supposed to do.
And Raul, you are not just don't mean to sound but like, you're not just a bureaucrat, you also teach. You're a political science professor, right?
Yes.
In a community college.
Yes, I do. That's my evening job. That's my evening job. So okay. I do that also. That keeps me connected to the students. Really I enjoy it.
But okay, so you do sometimes have to put on the administrator hat, but so what is the role of the Chancellor's Office in terms of furthering this dual enrollment strategy?
To provide guidance. That's what we're here to do. If colleges need guidance, questions, that is what we're here to do. Just to give any information that we can to help the process of getting these started as easy as possible. That's our job.
So you're available? I mean,
Yes.
we can
Anytime
give
a
you
college
contact
wants to call me,
information.
Call me, email me. I have no problem talking to any college, any high school. If they have any questions, yeah, that's what we're here for.
Okay. Well, I think some people are going to take you up on that offer. Let me go now to Rosa de Anda. You have been following the ins and outs on legislation. Last fall, there's something called Assembly Bill 30 passed. And I think what actually was in that bill?
Well, that bill started out in response to criticism from the field about how cumbersome it was getting to be to implement the CCAP program, that form of dual enrollment. And so Assemblymember Holden put together a bill that the intent was to make the program more administratively efficient in terms of operating it. Probably there are two main provisions in that bill. First, it no longer requires that people go through the two boards, one for an information item and second as an action item at the community college board and at the school district board. So that's 4 board meetings that initially was required. Now it's only 2. So a community college person can take it to the board for information and the board can take action at that meeting. A school district can take the item as information and then vote it up or down. So that helps tremendously. The other issue is that statute requires a parental consent form from high school students to participate. With CCAP, we left that in statute as well, but it just, paper started piling up everywhere. So now—
And Rosa, just quickly, just CCAP for those of people who haven't mastered that
College
stands
and
for
Career Access Pathway. College and Career Access Pathway.
That's right. That's
Thank
what
you.
CCAP is. So now we only need 1 parent consent form for the duration of a student's participation in the program. So that's a tremendous administrative relief for our personnel at the community colleges and at the school districts. The other thing that bill does is it adds in continuation high schools. It used to be just comprehensive high schools and charter schools, and now we have continuation high schools added to eligible LEAs who can participate with the CCAP partnership.
And the county schools, juvenile.
No, that's in a bill for this year.
For this
That's
year,
in a
okay.
separate bill. So we'll see if it makes it through the legislative process. If the governor signs it, that bill will become law next January, and we'll be adding county offices of education schools to the mix of eligible schools that can participate with the CCAP partnerships.
And I just also wanted to note that as we reported on EdSource, there was a governor's budget that he proposed for next year, lots of things in there, and there was $5 million for textbooks, for instructional materials, for dual enrollment programs. What was the background on that?
Okay, well, for the CCAP program, it's prohibited to charge CCAP participants any fees or anything, even for textbooks. So part of the partnership agreement for CCAP requires that the school districts and the community college districts decide how are we going to handle textbooks. So I think there was input given to the governor's office, and he agreed that some relief should be provided so that students who are involved in dual enrollment won't have to pay for textbooks.
So that would maybe encourage some school districts who didn't want to participate because of this cost, right? That would have been a barrier.
Correct. Yeah. Because for regular dual enrollment, that is dual enrollment going on in the state that has nothing to do with CCAP, that's not the case. I mean, textbooks can be a problem.
Okay, well, this is encouraging. I do just want to take note of the slogan behind you there, the community college folks conquer the world. I like that.
Yes,
So can we just, John, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, yeah. Are there online possibilities, or are there any dual enrollment agreements for online?
Okay, last year's bill added, was it, or the year before? Maybe the year before. It added an online platform option to the CCAP program. So CCAP partnerships can, in fact, offer community college courses online as part of the partnership.
And a question that we got, I think, following up on that, can students, classes that are taken online, are those credits transferable to UC and CSU?
Oh, yeah. If it's a community college course that's transferable, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that really ties back into what was covered a little earlier by Leslie and her constituent, the GETSI course requirements. So the intersegmental general education transfer courses, those courses are transferable through the JC to the UC system. So there's a heavy emphasis that we have within Compton, especially around our early college, where that's the primary focus, because we want all the courses that they are taking to be transferable to the CSU system, as well as the UC system, should they choose that as an option for their college.
Just wanted to encourage those of you out there who want to send any questions, go to the Q&A button and just send us your questions. We'll try to get to them.
How can we encourage more high schools from forming agreements with their community colleges? What obstacles might there be in the way? And Darren, Leslie, and could you speak to that? You talked about the community college limitation of you have to deal with your own community, one community college down. Are there other obstacles that you see as standing in the way?
Well, I think, let's talk about what's working first.
Sure.
What's working well is simply the dual credit option, right? So, you have students that are fulfilling courses that are counting for college courses, also CTE pathways, as well as knocking out high school credit at the same time. So that's working very well. The obstacles, as I stated before, were, limited options. So if you're a student that has other interests than what is being offered with the local community college, why should you be locked into just that community college as part of this process? If the community college district is really, I won't even say district, community colleges in general, if they're really serious about more kids being prepared for college, then why not open this up so that kids can take whatever they're interested in, wherever they are, in terms of what they have access to, either in person with surrounding community colleges, online courses, whatever it may be, in terms of the college courses that spark an interest so that more kids are on a pathway to be more successful in college. We know that kids that take 2 or more courses, college courses, and have a successful pass rate are more than likely to go on and be very successful later on with their college journey. So why not open it up instead of it being so restricted?
So we have a number of questions. I'm just going to go through them. So let's try to, try to answer them as succinctly as possible. So we get lots of questions, I have to say. For the Oakland folks, have you found any courses that have not worked well in dual enrollment programs?
Honestly, no. I think I would probably just say that sometimes if you are only approaching dual enrollment through the lens of like, this is what we want to do for our pathway without really understanding whether students are actually interested in taking those courses, sometimes you run into some very, very technical, esoteric type courses that just aren't going to meet the enrollment minimums. So I think always designing a program with students at the center will bring you success. I did want to, if I can jump in to add to what the superintendent was sharing, I couldn't agree more about that. If there could be more diversity as far as school districts being able to work with other partner community colleges outside of their territories, that would really greatly expand. But I think some other things to really, I got to say, I'm not surprised at the low participation rates across California. And I would pin it on the fact that California public education funding is insufficient to support even the basic needs of our students, regardless, and not even, never mind innovations like dual enrollment, we were really only able to do this because of a local parcel tax. And many of you will probably hear in the news that we're going to have to be cutting. We have another round of major budget cuts that we're going to have to make. And it's really a question as to whether we can sustain our incredible dual enrollment program.
This is in Oakland.
This is in Oakland. And so I wonder, and I wouldn't be surprised that other school districts are grappling with the same issues of under enrollment and budget cuts. And the question for the state is, we have some incredible legislation that encourages early college credit, but to what extent are we able to sustain these innovations in the context of fiscal uncertainty? And then I would also just add, one limitation with growth is that school districts, you know, when we're partnering with community colleges that are faced with fiscal uncertainty and they're faced with budget cuts, how do we know that in the next school year, if we've invested millions of dollars in a dual enrollment program for 15 plus high schools, how do we know with certainty that those courses are going to happen? There are no guarantees currently that exist. So if a community college is faced with budget cuts, how are school districts then buffered from that? And there is a good model that our community college has instituted where we have some guaranteed FTEF. You know, so that's another consideration.
Yeah, I did want to raise the question, a question that how many of these courses are taught by employees of high school districts who hold master's degrees or higher? Why don't you just go to the community college representatives? What's the requirements there?
They have to meet our minimum qualifications, and it depends on the discipline. Whether if it's CTE, career technical education, there are different minimum qualifications for different disciplines. So they have to go by our discipline list and the minimum qualification for each discipline. So
can they be, it said, the question is, can they be employees of the district or do they have to be community college faculty?
Well, they can, if they're a high school teacher, then they just have to be an employee through the community college also.
Leslie, all of your teachers are faculty from the community colleges, am I right?
Correct. I would, you know, I don't have the exact stats, but roughly 95% of our faculty are from the community college. So they're either adjuncts or full-timers at the community college and they push into the high schools. We have maybe a couple from the high school who met the minimum qualifications. And, but the challenge here is that is a pay issue. And I think that's another potential area that we could explore statewide as a potential barrier, because there are a number of high school teachers who meet the minimum qualifications. The problem is that they are salaried and employed by the school district. And most of our courses happen during the school day. And so the question is, during the school day, if a high school teacher who meets minimum quals, theoretically they could teach during the school day, but then they're also getting paid by the community college system. So it's a question of how you create a business model that works. And you know, any support from the state would be wonderful. There are some incredible models that exist and do this well, and they negotiate that locally, however.
Another question, maybe I'll just ask Darren Brawley this. Do dual enrollment staff receive a stipend or additional pay for teaching the classes?
No, they do not. No, they do not. And most of the courses within Compton are actually taught by college professors at the community college. I believe we have one person that I'm aware of that does both. Teaches for us, teaches for them.
While I have you, another question from Michael Butler. How do we avoid AP and dual enrollment classes from cannibalizing each other? And when should a student take AP versus dual enrollment or vice versa? I guess it's an individual decision, but yeah, any comment on that?
I'm happy to jump in here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in here. You know, fundamentally, they're very different types of courses that are offered, AP versus dual enrollment courses. Our dual enrollment courses tend to be more CTE, career ed, And they're also more elective type courses, whereas AP, the nature of the course offerings in AP is very different. So we like using both as tools to give our students an advantage.
And for Compton, we use both. You know, at the early college, with the early college, then we have more of a focus on the GETSI courses, the intersegmental general education transfer courses, which would be your typical equivalents to the AP courses, if you will. And so the early college will rely on a lot more of that than our comprehensive high schools, where the CTE pathway approach would be in place, along with some GETSI requirements as well. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Darren. And Leslie, am I right that the point of dual enrollment is not to displace a course that is required in a high school, in a comprehensive high school? It's supposed to be something different. Am I right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The way it's operated in our district is that the courses do not supplant. So they don't replace any existing high school course, teacher, or program. And by design, these courses really are supposed to be complementary, or the next sort of advanced college level course to a program of study for a CTE pathway, or like Superintendent Brawley's district, we also have a number of IGETSI type courses that give our students an advantage once they go to the 4-year or 2-year college.
I wanted to ask,
and I would agree with that. There's no displacement. Think of it this way. In terms of the IGETSI components, they are simply fulfilling some of the courses that they would have fulfilled within a 4-year program before they ever get to that 4-year program.
here's two related questions. I think many of us would have this question. My fear is that dual enrollment courses might be watered down at the high school level. And then related to that, what accountability measures are in place to secure that dual enrollment courses are treated as a college course and have similar rigor and expectations? Let me ask the community college representatives about that those questions. Now we need to unmute. Could you unmute?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, these are college courses, so they're not supposed to be watered down. The rigor is supposed to be the same. And they're taught, like I said, most of them said 95% are faculty. So it's the exact same course you would take on a regular college campus. There should not be any difference at all.
Leslie, Fatima, what do you do to make sure that your courses are rigorous?
We definitely emphasize to instructors to maintain the rigor. We have a faculty survey each semester where faculty feeds back to us that they believe their courses are rigorous. And also I host professional developments for the college instructors. And part of it is like, you know, how to teach in a high school context, but really the moral of the story is good teaching is good teaching. So if you're adding scaffolds to your instruction, if you're thinking about individualizing your instruction or thinking about different student needs, that's a fantastic thing for an educator to do in any setting. That's not watering down. So I really try to have conversations with instructors who are concerned about that, or anyone who's concerned about that, around discerning what is rigor and what is support and what is individualizing and having differentiated instruction, for example. And so that we're clear as educators about what does it mean to support students and what does it mean to push your own pedagogy and your approaches and tools and tactics in the classroom, and how that doesn't impact rigor. So good teaching is good teaching.
I just want to add that what we know from the research is that in addition to the content that is in these courses, that having these types of college experiences while you're in high school, whether it's dual enrollment or advanced placement, also provides students with a lot of signals about the fact that they could be successful when they're in college. And so that's every bit as important as the content itself.
And if I could add to that, we've had so many students who talk directly about, who are off in college now or in different post-secondary experiences, and they often are reaching back to us about how their dual enrollment experience directly prevented them from having like imposter syndrome at, for example, the colleges, and feeling like they do belong and that they could reference experiences they had in the safe environment of the high school dual enrollment classes, whether it's vocabulary, you know, ways to study, just knowing the pattern of a semester-long class, that directly helped them feel confident in a college setting where they didn't see other students who look like themselves, or they've been messaged over time that they don't belong in such spaces. That dual enrollment directly supported their confidence in that environment.
And we've just been talking with Fatima Gartalo, who's a teacher, dual enrollment specialist at Oakland Unified. McCall, did you want to jump in on?
No, just that how important. I just wanted to echo what Fatima said. That's
okay. This is a question for our community college representatives. The California community colleges are supposed to be implemented guided pathways. That's a streamlined approach to two-year post-secondary education. How does dual enrollment fit into the guided pathways, if at all?
When you're talking about dual enrollment, are we talking about the College and Career Pathways Partnership Program? If we are talking about CCAP, then we can talk about aligned pathways that lead to college level work and to college. With regular dual enrollment, it has never been a pathway. For decades, it was typically one-off courses that students who are already bound for college would take to decrease their time to degree attainment. But it's with the CCAP program where we're truly looking at aligned pathways that take a student to higher and higher levels until they reach college level coursework, or that they're succeeding in college level coursework. And the way that's done is through the partnership between the school district and the community college, and they figure out what alignment is going to work best to make sure students can achieve college level work.
We have to watch the time, but we did have a question, and if you could just briefly, I mean, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, both Darren Brawley from Compton Unified and the Oakland representatives, how difficult, how complicated is it to set up these MOUs, the Memorandum of Understanding with the colleges?
I don't think the Memorandum of Understanding is difficult. I think the other piece that we've been talking about is difficult, where they go outside of the community college to allow other community colleges to partnership. That's the difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Oakland?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, we have a very healthy, robust partnership with our local community college. There are certain points of contention that come up during negotiations, and we will be entering negotiations around a CCAP in the coming months. And I think there's certain topics where we are just different. And one of those is what Superintendent Brawley's talking about. And there's a number of other issues too, but yeah.
And I do think, Rosa, I think you might want to jump in there, but when this was set up, and I believe Raul Arumbala, you were involved in creating this whole program. It was intended not to be that easy. I mean, you do want the college and the district to really have a very clear understanding of what's involved.
Right. There's a statute in place in California Ed Code that only permits a CCAP student to take courses from another community college district with the express authorization or approval of the chancellor or the president of that district. So it can be done. It just means that it's more negotiation.
One very practical question here. How do students register for the courses, through the high schools or the community college?
We're happy to take that one. I am so happy to see through AB 30 that there was a streamlined approach statewide around one parent release form. We actually created a model in Oakland because of our advocacy from the school district, and our community college partners were open to it. And we have been using one form for about 4 years now. And the beauty of that is the student signs one form and they are done for the entire duration of high school, whereas before they had to do a semester form every time. And that was a huge barrier to really scaling this program. But the other kind of next challenge that we're faced with is figuring out how to kind of make that an electronic form. The second, I would say, barrier is that students have to apply, at least for our system, they're deactivated from the system if they skip 2 primary terms. A primary term is fall or spring. And then they have to basically log back in and create a new account or submit an updated application. And I don't know, those are some of the barriers that we're faced
So
with.
there are a number, I'm just watching the time, I wanted to
Yeah.
get in a couple of, and again, this is probably a big topic, but a question about students who do not complete the courses or earn credits. Mikhail Kurlander showed that about 10% of these students never complete these courses. How does this affect their financial aid status? That was one of the questions, I guess, related to community colleges.
In effect, I mean, they're not paying for these courses as high school students, but it shouldn't affect their financial aid later, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm. But would it go on their transcripts then, college transcripts, if they fail the course in the?
Yes.
So that would be something for the student to be aware of, right? They have to be serious about this.
One question, if your high school doesn't have a formal agreement, we make it easier for other students just to take courses at community colleges? Are there any impediments to that to get credit?
Really, I think the folks from the agencies should answer that as well, but I think that's a great question. If we had broken down our data also by the formal programs, which are harder to identify in our data, and just individual students seeking out all the just wealth of just richness of courses that are offered across the community college system, you would see even bigger disparities. And that's partly because of what Leslie and Fatima have indicated, which is the need for more resources for students to be aware of this. This shouldn't be something that just because you live in a high school where a lot of other individual students are seeking out these courses, we should reduce the barriers for students to take courses across the community college system, online or in person, at a community college near you, or one that's potentially far if you're able to get there.
We are running out of time, but I did want to just ask Darren Brawley, because Oakland raised that they had a parcel tax that helps underwrite this. Do you have a parcel tax or special funding?
No parcel tax or special funding. Historically, we've paid for textbooks associated with any of the courses that our students.
One very last question about how does this fit into their student schedule? Are the students have to take some of these courses at night, in the afternoons, or is it fully integrated into the day? Oakland?
For Oakland, it's fully integrated in their day. The vast majority of our roughly 50 courses in the spring are during the school day right now. And it really has to do with access. There's limited number of students who could take courses before and after school.
Same with Compton.
Yeah, and by the way, before, when we asked about whether if a student doesn't succeed in a class, it goes on their college transcripts, the community college representatives were nodding their heads. It does. I'm not sure you could see that on the screen.
Yes, it does.
So, well, that brings us to the end of this really incredibly rich hour. I did want to say we got over 100 questions, and I mean, each one of them were super interesting, and shows that this is actually more complicated than it seems. There's a lot of pieces to it, but also tremendous interest in this in the topic. And for those of you who want to follow our reporting on this issue, as I mentioned before, you can sign up for our daily email at edsource.org. We really would appreciate your feedback on this webinar. There'll be a very brief survey on your screen when you sign off, and if you could take 2 minutes to provide input on today's discussion, that would be fantastic. Also wanted to acknowledge the College Futures Foundation, which is underwriting this webinar series. And most importantly, just wanted to thank the panelists for their extraordinary work. This is what gives me hope about the future of education in California. I'm very grateful. We are very grateful at EdSource to be covering California, because there's so much happening that's really positive. But most of all, thanks to the researchers, the practitioners in the classroom, the superintendent, and the folks at the California community colleges are trying to move 114 campus system forward, which is hugely challenging.
100 questions would be a lot to ask our panelists to answer, but we will ask them to do some of them and to post them, and we thank you for sending them in.
So thank you so much. Good afternoon, and please fill out the brief survey.